So good evening, everyone. We have a quorum this evening. This is the July 10th, 2024 meeting of the Lunenburg Open Space Committee. In accordance with requirements of open meeting law, this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live over Lunenburg Public Access Channel on Facebook Live. It's a Zoom meeting, and hopefully if you're attending the meeting, you've got the Zoom link. It was on the town calendar, the town website. The Zoom number is, see if I can figure this out. I don't know, a whole bunch of numbers. I think we're all set. So it is 7:33 by my clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Eric, would you do me a favor and do the minutes tonight?
I'd be happy to. I was actually just getting that set up.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I actually already have it going if you want me to do
Oh, you do? Yeah, you are the recording secretary, aren't you?
something like that.
You're the clerk. All right, let the clerk do it.
Happily.
You're off the hook, Eric.
Yeah, you're off the hook, Eric.
Yeah. If you've
All right,
seen the way
so
I type, you'd know that was a relief.
So the first agenda item is to approve the minutes from March 16th. It's been a while since we all met, between problems with getting Zoom links and meetings set up and quorums and everything else. Glad to see we have a quorum this evening. Mary is not going to be able to make it tonight, I think, because she has Conservation Commission at the same time, because they didn't have a meeting last week because of the holiday. So they pushed it off a week. I haven't heard from Matthew, so he may or may not be joining us, but we'll just forge on. So I had forwarded out the March 16th minutes. I'm sorry, Anna.
I apologize. Just as a note, I think we will have a new representative from the planning board, and it will be their new member, but I don't know his name.
Okay.
So just as a FYI.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to talk about the committee membership probably a little later on, because I know there may be some changes from parks as well. So let's go back to the minutes approval. I'm sorry I didn't forward them out again, but I had looked through them a couple times. Eric did them for us. I thought they looked fine. Did anybody have any comments on the March 16th minutes?
No comment.
No comment, no comment. And Eric wrote them, so you don't have a comment. Okay. So can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So we'll do a roll call since we're on Zoom. So Brandon?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
And Mike, the chair, votes aye as well. So those minutes have been approved. I will forward those to the town clerk. The next item is, we were going to talk about, and this has been a discussion point for a while, having joint meetings with the planning board when rights of first refusal issues come up. But this may also be a good time on it to talk about the membership of this committee. Did Parks make any changes?
So I am no longer in the Parks Commission, and
Right.
And I did ask in the planning board, not in their last meeting, but the previous meeting, they appointed me as the at-large meeting, at-large member for the open space. And Parks will be having their meeting next week, and I expect them someone there to be appointed. So then we'll have full membership.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, I kept you because I had that question come to me from town hall. So for the purpose of this meeting, I kept you as the vice chair and the Parks Commission representative. So we'll change you to community member.
Yes,
Right?
at large member. Yes.
Yeah, we had a vacancy for community members, so now we have a full slate. And Matthew is no longer going to be the planning board rep. Is that what you were telling us before, Anna?
Yeah, so I think the same night that I was appointed, that they did their committee reorganization, and I believe it was their newest member signed up to be part of the open space, but I don't recall his name now. But yes, so
Okay.
he will be. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have his name. If you
No, that's okay. I'll check in with the planning board and see who the rep is going to be. And
Okay.
we'll get that fixed up for the next meeting. That's great.
With that, I was the Economic Development Committee representative from Open Space. I have attended other meetings. Last year, we did the meet and greet with town officials. And unless anyone from this board would like to be that person, I'm volunteering to continue to serve as that person.
So Brandon can see this. I know what everybody else can, but you know what that means, right?
What?
What I did? I don't, Brandon
No,
can see
I
it.
don't know.
Not
I
me.
can't see it.
I know you can't.
If you're happy to continue in that role, Anna, I'm certainly happy to
Yeah, that'd be great.
have that as well.
So,
Okay.
Anna, we can talk about this when we get full membership. For right now, do you want to stay on as vice chair of this committee?
So when I became the vice chair I have attended meetings regularly and I can run a meeting. Maybe we can talk about it when the new park person comes, and maybe there'll be someone else who would like to be the vice chair.
Yeah, I'll put it on the agenda for a future meeting for us to talk about our different roles. Because
Right.
maybe I'll step off as chair, somebody else will take that. We'll have, maybe somebody else want to be clerk. So we'll talk about that in a future meeting. So I'll leave that as a future agenda item.
Okay, and if when we have more members too, I'm happy to talk about the EDC as well.
Great.
I mostly wanted to throw it out there that I didn't forget about that.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to the concept of having a joint meeting with the planning board. I know I talked to a few of you separately about this, and I've talked to some of the planning board members about this. People seem to think it's a good idea. Logistically, it's a little difficult because we would probably go to their meeting and then, even if we don't have a quorum of our committee at their meeting, we could actually, we could coordinate with whatever members we have and bring it back if we had to bring it back to a full quorum of the open space committee. But rather than play tag with meeting dates and miss opportunities with right of first refusal, I thought maybe we should try to proceed with this. Any thoughts on that?
I like that idea.
Likewise, and if we can get it so that we have a quorum and can do it all at once, then that would be preferable than us. Because otherwise, if we don't have a quorum, it almost doesn't make any difference.
Right, right. The only caveat was that planning was on board with it, provided we go to their meeting.
Yeah.
And since we're appointed by the planning board, I guess that's appropriate.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with that.
I mean, technically, we're an advisor to them.
Right.
Oh.
Right. Okay. So we'll proceed with that. So let's move on to item number 4. This one may be going away. There was a supposedly a right of first refusal for a property at 20 Kilburn. But nobody seems to have been served the right of first refusal. The attorney for the applicant or the owner said he had brought information over to all the boards, but nobody ever received anything, including conservation or planning or us. So I think it's going away, but conservation, Mary's not here, but I talked to her about it. Conservation did go ahead and discuss this. So I've got somebody coming in the meeting. Let me admit them first. Okay. Mr. or Ms. McLeod, is it? Could you unmute yourself and say hi? Maybe not. We can get back to that.
So
Anyway.
Mr. McLeod is the planning board member.
Okay,
He might just be getting acquainted with Zoom there.
I see. Mr. McLeod, if you can, there's a mute unmute button on your Zoom screen. If you could unmute yourself, we can all say hi. Because I don't think I can do it. I'm going to send a message. Okay, we'll move on. As I was saying, Mary Wilson and I talked about this. Conservation did discuss the property very briefly, apparently, at their last meeting. And they, as the commission, is coming back in again. They at the commission, the Conservation Commission, was not necessarily interested in the property because it's not contiguous to any other publicly owned land. It doesn't provide any additional access. It may be a moot point because we don't have an official right of first refusal on the table or timeline, but I want to throw it on the agenda to see if anybody's heard anything differently.
Well, I also have not heard that it has come forward. I haven't seen anything. I hope it has not gotten lost in the land use planner shuffle. Whoever would be filling Adam's role. So it would be too bad to miss it on a technicality.
Yeah.
So that's first, and then second, I did take a look at it from a couple of different angles. I don't agree with the Conservation Commission's assessment that it does not abut other municipally owned land. In fact, it does. And 3 different small parcels of land that are all tax title parcels that are on the backside of Massapog Pond, that are owned by the town, in that red maple swamp. If you're familiar with looking at Massapog as you're driving down Lancaster Ave, particularly in the fall when that red maple swamp is ablaze in red. The town owns quite a big chunk of that in tax title.
Okay.
And this parcel happens to abut in the back area of that. If I can share my screen,
Sure.
I'll show you kind of what I'm looking at.
I need to give you control somehow here. Let's see.
Maybe,
Or can you just do it? Let me stop share and see if you've got the opportunity. And if not, let me know.
I don't see an opportunity to do it. I think you're going to have to give.
All right.
Oh, wait, no, I do. I see it. Let's see if I can make this happen. Host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Which I haven't done, but I'm going to make you co-host so you can share. Okay.
Okay.
I think that's the default setting when I inherit the meeting.
So in yellow here is the parcel in question, 20 Kilburn. And by assessor's information, it shows it to be size 91 acres, 92 acres in size. This parcel here is Town of Lunenburg tax title land. This parcel here, Town of Lunenburg, that's actually not tax title. That was gifted to the town by Macmillan, I think, a dozen years ago or so. And then this is tax title land here as well. So so it does abut, it's not insubstantial that provides shoreline access. Oh, this is red maple swamp. Nobody's getting there, but really interesting habitats. I looked at the natural heritage data. There are no mapped habitat areas here, so it's not, of regional significance. There's no natural heritage data here. There's no biomap core or supporting natural landscapes.
No potential vernal pools.
No potential vernal pools. But as you can see on the aerial here, it's quite a complex and a variety of types of wetlands.
Yeah.
In here. It's really quite interesting. And I know just from my own experience, I've seen a lot of wildlife activity as I drive by here on Leominster Road. In fact, I was just noting to my wife last night as we were driving through there during a raging rainstorm, how many frogs there were right there. So,
Okay.
not surprisingly. So yeah, it does actually abut town land. It does have more than 50 acres. Doesn't have regionally significant habitats, but it does have interesting habitats, and it does have access on Munster Road and Kilburn Street.
So it meets 4 of the 5 criteria?
4 of the 6 at least.
6, sorry.
Yep. Prime agricultural land is the other one, which this does not have.
Okay.
So.
I'm a little bit at a loss though, Brandon, because we don't have, a formal right of first refusal
Right.
on the table.
I wanted to point that out. So if and when we do get it, so people have some context around it, going forward.
Okay, I don't want to put words in Mary's mouth, but it sounds like conservation, one of the boards, I thought it was conservation, may have already acted on something on this parcel, and the whole point that it was in chapter never came up during the process.
That would make the second time that's happened, which is a downfall in our town's process for reviewing permits.
Yeah.
Is one of the things they should do on any property is as a matter of course for reviewing permits is to check to see if it's enrolled in chapter 61.
So I'm one of the things that I'm also doing with the town, Brandon, and others, so that you guys know, is I'm mentoring Sophie, the new administrator over at the Conservation Commission. And I don't meet with her, and I don't meet with her every week, but we meet on occasion and we talk about different topics. And this may be a topic that I can bring up to her, because that would be the first line of defense if she sees an application come in, to immediately go and see if it's the deeds listed in chapter or not. And that would show on the assessor's database.
Should.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a simple thing to do annually, is just to create a list of chapter 61 properties and have them stuck in your pin board next to your permit review desk and just take a look at it every time something comes across your desk. It's not a long list.
Okay.
One thing I'll add, so yesterday this property came up for discussion at the select board meeting, and their lawyer was there, and he got the select board in some technical thing about having to give, because there's not changing. So they're turning that parcel into 3 parcels, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they need to take it out of protection, out of chapter, to do the terms, whatever the term is in planning board. I'm not well versed in all the terms of all the boards yet. But because one of the parcels are not going to change hands, according to the lawyer, the owner's lawyer, was the town had 30 days to provide with not an estimate, but an appraisal. And because the town failed to do that, therefore the town cannot exercise its rights. And the select board then voted to not exercise their first right of refusal on one of the lots. I don't know which one it is. They didn't have a map. So I think maybe we can still, if we want to take action on this and say that we do have interest and that we think the town should consider, and just get this ball rolling on the way of preserving. I don't think we should wait any longer to say, yay, should be of importance to us, because there is a great chance that by the time all this paperwork is found, distributed, we might miss the next deadline. And, one thing that I do believe it's kind of, there's the good and the bad on this as a strategy of negotiation. But if the town says, we know they want to sell 2 of the properties, if the town says, oh, you know what, we're actually interested in this property, and the owners might come back to us and like, tell me exactly what you're interested. Maybe I'll give you that piece of land and I'll develop something else. because they're looking to make money. So I think we should take action on it tonight, yay or nay, and inform town manager right away so that she can act on that and bring that into the select board next meeting. Because otherwise you're gonna miss another opportunity. A lot of silence there.
Well, now I'm mostly just processing. Sorry for the silence.
No, that's okay.
And part of what I'm processing is, how did the select board, or why would the select board go through this?
Well, you know,
Consulting other town boards and, this just so against how we've dealt with these things in the past.
well,
so-
I mean, I have a lot of personal opinion about it, but I'm not gonna say that in a recorded public meeting.
Yeah,
But I'll be happy to share
Yeah.
them privately with you because it was an interesting exchange there. Who the owners are of that property, I don't know if you all know who they are. So I think there was a lot of things happening, and that's why, having the select board taking actions of that nature, we should let them know if our view is that we should try to preserve and we have so anyway.
Well, thank you for that information. I am still gonna process it. I'm,
Okay.
but honestly boiling a little under my skin right now, so.
Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, I have been boiling for almost 24 hours.
Okay. Well, thanks for that information. And I'll have to go back and review the select board meeting to understand a little more clearly what the argument was in the perspective, but there are some caveats in the law regarding conveyances to family members. So there are things that are, but I can't tell you what the letter of it is off the top of my head, so I'm not going to say it here. But I do know that there are some caveats in the law around transfers to family members. And there are, there are deadlines and procedures. And so, namely that certain town boards have to be notified as part. It doesn't just go to a single town board. It doesn't just go to the Board of Selectmen. The Chapter 61 process requires notification to go to the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, at least, in addition to the Board of Selectmen. So
yeah,
that would constitute improper notice if we weren't in fact notified.
That's really
Mary
good to
said
know.
conservation was not notified.
So, and I don't know if town council has reviewed this and weighed in, but I think it's pretty improper for the Board of Selectmen if they're just, and I haven't seen it, so I'm not saying that's what happened, but if the Board of Selectmen took somebody else's lawyer's opinion on that and acted on that advice, then that's poor form. So I hope that's not what happened, but we need to review how the meeting went. It's shocking.
Is town manager still in office right now?
Yes.
You broke up there, Anna.
Oh, she is. She's around until August 4th.
All right, I got the she is. I had no idea that she was leaving, first of all, and I didn't know what her end date was.
I had heard she's leaving, but I don't know what her end date is.
Right, okay.
I'm going through a bad zone right.
Okay.
All right, I don't know if we can do much else on this, Brandon. What do you think?
I don't either, other than,
And now, so I,
review the last Board of Selectmen's meeting and see if we can get a sense of what has happened. And then, you know, I will, I'm interested in doing that now, and and we'll maybe suggest a course of action to you, Mr. Chairman, if we so choose. So obviously it would require another meeting of this committee to vote on that, but I mean, we don't have a right of first refusal in front of us to vote on. So,
Right.
you know, I don't know that we can take any action on
And
this.
we were not asked by the town manager or anybody to offer an opinion on this.
Yeah. In
It was
fact,
just-
I'm looking through my emails when I saw this on the agenda, trying to figure out what the heck we were talking about. So,
There was a flurry of emails going back and forth about what was sent over and what wasn't sent over. So I put it on the agenda just to check with all of you. You might know better than me what was happening or not happening with this, but there was typically we get a request through the town manager's office to this committee to make a recommendation. And we didn't receive that.
I'm back. I lost my audio there for a minute. Sorry about that.
It's okay. So table it for now, Brandon?
that's what I would do.
Okay. Mr. McLeod, you're with us now. Can you unmute? There you go.
Yes, hello there. Sorry, I have an iPad that I don't usually use, and I had the microphone disabled.
Okay. Well, nice to have you. Are you the new rep from the planning board?
Yes, that is correct.
Awesome. So
And is it George?
Glenn, sorry, Glenn
Glenn.
with two N's.
well, nice to meet you, Glenn. We've got everybody here except for Mary now at this point, right? And whoever the new member is from Park. So I don't know whether you can see all our names, but I'm Mike Toohill. I'm the chair. Anna's with us. She is the vice chair. Brandon is the clerk. Eric you're at large, right, Eric? At large member? Or
Yep.
community
Yep.
member, I guess.
That's correct.
Okay. And we're gonna have a new representative from Parks before too long as well. So we'll for the first time, I think since I've been on this committee, we'll have a full slate, which is
Nice.
great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Did planning discuss this property at all? Do you know, Glenn?
I don't think so. Not in detail, anyway.
Okay. Yeah, the only one I heard that did was conservation, but I think it's because they may have had a proposal in front of them for the property. So, but okay. So we're going
Yeah,
to table this to the next meeting because I think we really can't go any further.
Do we have a plan? And this might have happened when I couldn't hear anyone. Do we have a plan for someone to follow up with the town manager about this parcel and figure out what happened?
I'm certainly going to review the select board records and see what happened at that meeting myself and get a better impression of what the situation is there.
Okay.
If somebody else wants to follow up directly with the town manager and see what happened with the notifications, that would also be helpful.
Yeah, and I can do that, Brandon.
Okay.
I'll do that. I'll also take a look at the selectmen's minutes. And if you want to send me an email with your observations, we'll try to consolidate that and get that over to Ms. Lemieux.
Okay. Sounds good. And Anna, now that we have you in good audio, do you know when Heather's last day is
August 4th.
August 4th.
Okay. Yep. And Annie's the new secretary over there, administrative assistant.
Right.
So she was our administrator. She was very responsive when she was our administrative assistant for a while. We have a new Logan is our new administrative assistant. But Annie's also been helping him out and helping me out. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go back to the agenda then, if I can. Okay. Item number 5 was something that you asked for, and that's to start the discussion about the open space plan update process.
Yes. So I I was listening to a conservation commission, and Mr. Birch talked about the requirements for the town to purchase land, and he said that they started that back in 2012, and I think those are the items that we were talking a little bit ago about it. It meets the Dwayne Kilburn meets 4 of the 6 criteria. And one thing that I'm seeing in town is, the town is becoming more and more developed, and I think we have time, and I think that's why we need to consider a process for doing the next open space document, and maybe look at other cities and towns that look more like what Lunenburg is likely to look in 20 years, and maybe trying to create an open space plan that reflects that. So, for example, we just spoke about a land that's 91 acres that's going to be divided in 3 parcels. There was that piece of land up on West Townsend Road that was taken out of chapter, and there was a lot of acres, and I think is a brook that goes by there, but we decided not to move in with that, but that's land that's now going to be 3 parcels, and that is another piece of land that I don't know if it was in chapter, but they were in conservation commission, and they're going to have a cul-de-sac. It's very wet land, and they were in front of the conservation commission. They were there, actually, it was Dillis and Roy were there to ask if the conservation commission would even consider the plan that they were imagining. So it was very, very off, not really a plan. But all of these things make me think that, in 20 years, Lunenburg is going to be, very, very built. And when I look at those 6 elements of when should we acquire open space and add to the town and maybe even develop, I think we're going to be behind the ball if we don't change some of those requirements and some of those ideas. So, when I think of people enjoying the outside and getting the benefits of being outside, accessibility, and in sidewalks, you may think there is not a lot of emphasis on that, but when you look at the state open space, connectivity to spaces and open space is something they consider strongly. So, like when we're doing Marshall Park, the fact that we could say there was a sidewalk to Marshall Park we gained points into the grants, both grants. So when we talk about a process, what I had envisioned to suggest a group, and the group can say no, and people can give me other ideas, was perhaps we can, look at other cities and towns and things that other communities have done that we think is successful, and try to create that idea for us. What do we think that would be, maybe this is where Lunenburg will be in 20 years, and maybe create an open space plan that supports that. We like to think that Lunenburg is a rural community, and I do think that we have more land than not that's protected for agricultural use, and I think that's great. But the reality is probably in 20 to maybe 20 to 40 years, we're going to be more in a situation of, looking like Concord, where we have large, some really nice large farms and and a lot of houses around. So those are my thoughts about as a way to start the process. Start from scratch a little bit, not scratch, but not build like, I don't know. Maybe we need to adopt a different vision is my thought.
Brandon, when you and I think it was Paula was involved with the last update. And the new update is due what in 2027, I believe.
Right.
When did you start? Do you recall when you started that planning process for the current open space plan?
2018, I think.
2018?
Yep.
And what was the date on the plan?
On the then plan was probably 2018, if I remember right. I'd have to go back. I've gone through 2 or 3 of these now. They used to be 5-year plans, and we got this to be a 7-year plan, which was a lot more helpful. But yeah, it takes time, and a big part of that is, and I appreciate your perspective on but like any good municipal plan, we need to solicit the input of the general public, and that's the part that takes a lot of time and needs some coordination and process around. So we did surveys that were both available online and in paper form. We actually sent them out in tax envelopes to property owners as inserts to tax bills, and got a fair number of surveys returned that way. We did some sort of outreach with sort of some public charrette kind of things, and so that's where I think we need to get our vision from, and then certainly our individual visions will be part of that as well. But a well done open space plan really gathers the viewpoints of the public. That's the first thought I had. So starting that part of the process soon, is probably not a bad idea, like in 2025 to start the public process, so that we can have a plan that's ready to deliver, pretty early in 2027. It's important to remember that, one of the big things that having a valid open space plan does is it provides eligibility for certain grant programs. And the open space plan is a pretty defined thing. And in fact, if you go to the Open Space Committee's page, we have our open space plan posted there. And then we have the open space handbook for communities, which talks about the process that you need to undertake for open space plans. It's a pretty defined thing. And remember that town also has a master plan. And open space and conservation is a part of the master plan, but the open space plan is a separate thing. It's a state mandated document that has a certain form that, it makes you eligible for various grant monies, recreation and conservation grant monies. And so I wonder if some of what you're talking about there, Anna, has more to do with the master plan, the vision, long-term vision for the town and how we developed and how then it does the open space plan. So that's something I encourage you to look into and see if you agree that, maybe it's a different version of that plan. The open space plan is one thing, but the master plan is something that's a little bit more comprehensive, townwide, sort of focused.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
And the other thing I would say is there's nothing that would right now our acquisition guidelines, and that's all they are, guidelines, are an appendix to the open space plan. we could choose to append that and amend that if we decided to, and simply revisit those and amend them. And, you know, and I think that would be a reasonably easy thing to do to get us through the next couple of years, if that's something you thought would be worthy to consider. If that's the thing you're most focused on in the short term.
Okay.
Then we should look at that if that's something you're interested in doing.
Okay, no, that's a great idea, Miranda. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at the 6 criteria. We could
Right.
add or subtract if we needed to. We could actually add weighting if we wanted to
Right.
the different criteria.
Right. And, you know, and I think we've seen this. I mean, we've seen this, frankly, with some of the pushback we've seen at the Board of Selectmen for some of this going, you know, at this moment, is that there's a certain appetite in town. There's a limit to the appetite in town for spending town money on these items. And if we go to the well too many times, and if we don't focus on the things that are absolutely most important for us to conserve and protect for open space or recreation or conservation, then when we do find that one that we really want, we may have diluted people's interest enough that it'll be hard to get them. They'll have fatigue over it. And that was some of the thinking that was behind establishing reasonably high hurdle for those guidelines, is to make sure that we were asking the town to consider investing in things that were really the gems.
Yeah, and I agree with that. In public meeting, it was actually stated twice that I heard anyway, that the town has too much conservation land already.
You hear that all the time.
Right.
And, you know, and to Anna's point, I mean, maybe it's, you know, maybe the focus shouldn't just be on, maybe there's too much emphasis in those guidelines for conservation land and not enough emphasis in those guidelines for pocket parks or
Right.
other community spaces.
Public recreation spaces
that are important for recreation that aren't necessarily large tracts of conservation land.
Right.
And,
Right,
that's
and
valuable feedback that those, you know, we could reshape those guidelines to be more inclusive of.
And that's exactly what I'm thinking, because when I think about, you know, like the Whalum area, right? Like the Parks Commission actually has a piece of property there right next to Wallace that's not developed. And, you know, just creating a walkable space where people get there, and, you know, what can you offer that area that is accessible to people? And it's not clear to me that we're addressing that when, you know, it has to be 50 acres. We're leaving a huge part of the population without that benefit. So, you know, when people say we have too much, you know, open conservation land, you know, I also think of accessible spaces, and I don't know of the conservation land and the open spaces we have, how much of that is accessible. You know, it makes it that we are serving the, you know, the 8-year-old to the 60-year-old, you know, in average, and we're leaving a huge pocket of the population. You know, a mom with 2 toddlers, you know, they're not likely to go for a hike in a, you know, mile-long loop.
I mean, this gets back to, though, is, and I sorry to cut you off there, but we do, I mean, in the existing open space plan, we talk about that in our goals and objectives. You know, we talk about expanding capacity for the Parks Commission. We talk about provide easy access to information. We talk about linking conservation and recreation resources, repurposing general municipal lands, making ADA accessible enhancements, adding playing fields, adding develop, blah, blah, blah. Let's see.
No, and I hear that it's, but you know, the biggest thing, like if I were to, I don't have a backing to say, you know, like there's a new development happening in town of 50 houses. I want to convince someone that we should build a a open space area for the community that'll be there. And right now the open space plan doesn't really support, the fact that I would like to make that case. So that's all. So, we take it from here, whatever you guys like, but I appreciate you guys giving me the time.
So Brandon, in the minutes, would you make a note that in one of the next couple upcoming meetings, we ought to have an agenda item to discuss the 6 criteria and begin that discussion about potential amendment? And then we can, roll into the larger question of getting rolling with the public information process, which will take a while because we just got our tax bills for first and second quarter. So the next ones aren't coming out for a while, but that's okay because it's going to take us a while to put, a questionnaire together.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I do strongly recommend that people look at that open space handbook for communities. It's a really excellent, well done guide, and can help us get everybody's sort of thinking in the same way for how we what the approach should be going forward, or at least getting the juices flowing.
Yeah, the state had a great webinar that I attended, probably over a year ago at this point, talking about open space plans and open space plan updates, and went through a lot of details. So there may actually be, as there are on a lot of state websites, there may be a video up there of that presentation as well.
Yeah, there may be, and certainly there's lots of other resources available besides just the state's resources. The Massachusetts Land Trust Coalition does a really great job of providing some information about this type of information, this type of work. There's a it's called Mass Woods. It's a from the UMass Cooperative Extension that has some really great resources for municipalities interested in open space and recreation planning and protection actions, and some other nonprofit conservation organizations in the state that provide additional information. There's a wealth of information out there on this stuff.
Okay, awesome.
So, hey guys, I actually have an appointment at 8:30 and I gotta stop at the ladies' room before. I appreciate talking about this, but is it okay if I jump off? I think we still have quorum.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And Brendan, I'll be well-versed on both documents by the time we have our next meeting.
I know you will. I love that
Thank
about
you.
you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
very
Brendan.
much.
I appreciate you.
Likewise.
Take care.
Anna, before you jump off, I don't know whether you have it ready. Before you jump off, August 14th is our next scheduled meeting.
Yeah, I'll put it on my calendar.
I'm going to be out of state. Can you chair that meeting, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
All righty. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Good night.
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 Okay. I didn't know whether, Parks and Rec doesn't have any additional information for us. Conservation doesn't either. And that's usually where we do the member reports. Glenn, I don't know if you've been on the planning board long enough to have anything to report from the planning board for us.
Nothing really. We did last night. We did discuss the new MBTA Communities Act, which I think has huge impact on towns, potential impact on towns, particularly like Lunenburg, and that it's an initiative by the state that's essentially they're not happy with the development in smaller town or any towns near the MBTA lines, even adjacent communities. So I think that's definitely something that we're starting to talk about a little more in detail now, and requires a lot of attention.
Glenn, I guess I haven't thought about that as affecting Lunenburg, particularly because we don't have a station, but we do have the maintenance yard. You're saying, is that law affects any community where their MBTA even passes through?
Even beyond that, we're an adjacent. So if you're adjacent to a town that has a station, you get lit up. And it's been through a lot of iterations because of a lot of complaints, I suppose, to the state that which is one of the problems. They're based on guidelines, so they continue to change. But they have responded by reducing the amount of units that would be required in a town such as Lunenburg. So they reclassified as an adjacent small community, so that we would only be required to create 240, and they use the term units, but it's really better classified as homes, because each unit would have to have a minimum of 2 bedrooms. They cannot be 1 bedroom, and they cannot be age restricted.
So facilities like Tri-Town and Emerald Place are
Correct.
are potentially could potentially meet that type of criteria, right?
So that did come up in discussions, and the representative from CMRPC indicated that may qualify towards our 240 units, and I forget now, but I think there are like low 200 units that potentially could count. However, this is one of my points, is that there's just many questions that need answers, and it was simply my impression that this law required new units. That's the whole purpose of this law, is to force communities to develop beyond what their normal zoning would allow for. So she was going to get some clarification on that. So like I said, I was glad to hear that. That was refreshing to me. However, like I said, my understanding leading into that meeting was that they needed to be new additional units or homes.
Glenn,
So
excuse my ignorance. What's the teeth in this?
So that's a very interesting thing, and it's one of the issues. Like I spoke a little bit or quite a bit last night, and it's I'm still open-minded and certainly haven't made up any come to any conclusions. But the teeth in this is that all these zoning bylaws typically, or have always historically, been a 2/3 majority vote at town meeting to adopt them. But the state changed this to be a simple majority at town meeting to pass this. And one of the things I don't understand is why we're even voting on it, because it's a mandate. Meaning, initially, again, this gets back to the thing's been morphing as time goes on. That initially lost my train of thought. I'll have to come back to that. But they just they made like there were like 3 grants that you would no longer be eligible for if you did not if you did not adopt these. Yeah, right. And so, but they were minimal grants. Like, I think some towns had looked into it, and like over a course of a few years, it may have been a couple $100,000. But when they weighed that against the cost of infrastructure, schools, police, fire, and everything else that would be impacted by adding so many units, because just think, Lunenburg's is 240 units. But it's exponentially more if you're actually on have a commuter rail spot. Yeah. So anyway, so a lot of people were pushing back. So they opened up now it's like 10 grants that they because people were pushing back and saying, all right, that's no big deal. So they opened it up to a larger list of grants. And the two, you'll hear that there's only been 2 towns or cities that are not in compliance, and that's Milton and Holden. But there's been at least 11 other communities that have voted no. They're just not up against their deadline yet, so they still have time to reconsider those articles and then fall into compliance. So there is, it seems, a huge pushback from towns, but as more and more people learn about this, there's more and more pushback. And what I would recommend, if you Google Tewksbury, MBTA Communities Act, I'm sure that'll populate. They had a recent town meeting, and it was telling, because even their I believe it was their state rep or state senator, one of the two, spoke up and spoke in favor of this. And the article was resoundingly defeated by town. Like, they were angry, and it was I want to say 2-1 no. And so more and more communities are pushing back, because there's a lot of pressure to just develop it, because it doesn't require anybody to develop the land. You just pass this, you'll be in compliance, and just forget about it. But that's a pretty scary proposition.
It would be, it's extremely ironic that the withholding of grants, I don't know whether it does, but could potentially include grants that fund open space.
I'm sure, yeah.
In order to be able to force additional development, housing development. The state's doing some very interesting things. I was on a conference call today, Zoom meeting with the MEPA director and a whole bunch of other people from different engineering firms. MEPA is in the process of changing their regulations to make development more difficult because of greenhouse gas emissions protocols and criteria, and also to make it more difficult to cut down any forests, which is ironic, because the state is also pushing solar farms which cut down forests.
Right.
The state is asking, the MBTA is asking for additional development, and yet there are other agencies in the state are asking for preservation of open space.
Yeah.
Sorry, just dealing with this all the time. It's different agencies, doing this to each other.
Right. And that's one of the things I've found, because I've been in Lunenburg about a year now, and as even before moving, watching the various deciding on Lunenburg, watching the various town board meetings and et cetera, that it was clear, and particularly in the last few months with the budget crisis with the schools, that it's just amazing how much the town, and it's not just Lunenburg, but is working. It seems like we're working against the state. Like, I find myself, all these different things are like, is the state for us or against us? It's the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission came before us again last night, and it's like, there's these grants that sound like you just need to apply for, and they give us, like, she was there based on a grant that the planning board can hire these experts to advise us. So there's seems to be so many funds out there for these type of things, yet the schools are suffering, and all the in the town of Lunenburg, you're trying to get $10,000 in there, robbing Peter to pay Paul, yet the state is just handing out money.
Okay. Do we have any other miscellaneous business or member reports?
I don't, but now I'm going to look into the MBTA Communities Act too, so thanks for that.
Yeah,
information.
there you go.
Glenn?
Yeah.
More homework for you.
Yeah, that watch the Tewksbury one. That's a good lead into, you know, the
I just assumed that it had to do with communities that were, you know, had train stations.
Had
and
stations,
it
yeah.
didn't affect us.
Right.
And it just never even dawned on me how far reaching it was, but that's not surprising.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to my wife. Yeah, as you know, she's the town planner in Littleton. And so they're dealing with this because they have a station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be interested to hear what you learned from that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I need to listen more closely, Brandon. That's what I learned.
Well, don't say that too loudly.
And not in public. Okay. I don't think we have any members of the public here. No one else joined. So if it's okay, I'm going to skip over public comment because we don't have any. We're on to next meetings. As I mentioned, I'm not going to be available on August 14th. So Anna will chair. I think Mary's commission will be back on schedule. And we'll have 7 members by that time with a parks representative. So I think we'll be in good shape to have a quorum for the August 14th meeting, unless any of the 3 of you know for sure that the 14th doesn't work.
Work for me.
Okay, Glenn?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay,
It works for me too.
all right, awesome. That's great. The next meeting that we have scheduled is September 11th. And for some, myself, someone included, that's kind of a tough date. I didn't know whether the committee members had any feelings about having an evening meeting on September 11th.
It's not my favorite day.
Yeah. Yeah, I lost friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm all for changing that if we could come up with a date that works for everybody.
Okay. Well, tell you what, we'll keep it for now because it's 2 meetings out. And I can float the idea to everybody in an email because that's just discussing an upcoming meeting date.
Yep.
So we can do that. That doesn't violate open meeting law, so because it's just getting a date. So we'll do that, okay? Anything else before we adjourn?
I'll move, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you, thank you. Brandon?
Who seconded?
I
Eric?
did.
Eric?
Awesome. Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Glenn?
Am I actually a voting member?
Yes.
Aye.
You've been appointed, right, by the planning board?
I thought I was just a liaison.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah, That's an appointment.
we're an ad hoc committee of the planning board.
Okay.
But we go ahead and run the meetings by Robert's rules, so we vote and everything. Okay, awesome. And the chair votes aye. So we are adjourned, and I won't see you on the 14th. Have a good meeting, but I'll get the I'm not leaving town until the 13th, so I'll get the agenda set up and over and make sure it gets posted for us. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks all. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, guys.